Welcome to Ghosts of Asia, where forgotten spirits still whisper through alleyways, temples, and midnight screams. Here, we don't just tell ghost stories, we uncover the ones that were never meant to be found. Tonight's tale brings us to present-day Hanoi, Vietnam, to a tiny faux shop tucked deep inside an aging alley. Locals say its broth is the best in the city, but no one ever finishes it. Above the door hangs a worn wooden sign that reads, "Do not drink the last spoon." Most obey it. One man didn't. He was a food vlogger chasing internet fame. He finished the bowl on camera. Now people say his video is cursed. Thousands watched, and one by one they started dreaming of her, a woman with no jaw, kneeling by their beds, slurping what little soul they have left. Are you ready? Then sit down, breathe deep, and whatever you do, don't film her bowl. In the oldest parts of Hanoi, the streets don't lead, they trap. Juan stood at the edge of a narrow alley where the afternoon sun could no longer reach. Cracked concrete walls leaned inward, marked by peeling paint and vines that grew like veins. A tangled mess of wires buzzed faintly overhead. Behind him, the city's chaos roared, scooters, shouting vendors, clinking metal. But here, in this forgotten corner, time had stopped. He wasn't lost. He was looking for something. It was a rumor, a whisper, a post buried deep in an abandoned food forum that simply read, "Best pho I ever had. Don't finish it, ever." Guan, a food vlogger with 1.3 million subscribers, lived for stories like that. His channel was built on urban food legends, a cursed Ban Quan stall, a midnight market that only appeared on the 13th, a dish so spicy people passed out. He mixed myth with flavor, ghosts with garnish, and every time the line between real and fake blurred, his view count skyrocketed. This, a pho shop no one could find, with a rule no one could break, it was perfect. He followed the alley until it opened into a small courtyard. There, hidden beneath layers of ivy and soot, stood a green metal door. Hanging above it was a weathered wooden sign, "Pho Ong King," since 1971. And carved beneath that, in red faded paint, "Do not drink the last spoon." He smiled. "This is it," he whispered, raising his camera. "The forbidden pho." Inside, the shop was silent. Low wooden stools, oil-darkened walls, a single ceiling fan spinning slowly, as if out of obligation. The only source of light was the steam rising from a pot behind the counter, where an elderly woman stirred with a long metal ladle. She wore a floral scarf over her head and thick glasses that made her eyes look larger than life. She said nothing when Guan entered, just nodded at a table in the corner. No menus, no prices, no staff, no customers, just the sound of boiling broth. He sat, adjusted his camera, started recording. The old woman ladled the soup with a practiced hand and placed the bowl in front of him. She never made eye contact. Her silence felt less like disinterest and more like mourning. Guan looked down. The pho was stunning. The broth shimmered amber gold. Thin slices of rare beef floated beside rice noodles curled like ribbons. Flecks of green onion danced in the steam. The aroma hit him immediately. Not just savory, but nostalgic. It reminded him of cold mornings and warm kitchens. of something lost. He lifted the spoon. First sip, warmth, depth, sweetness that faded into spice, then vanished like mist. Second sip, richer, deeper. There was bone in this broth, hours, maybe days of boiling. Secrets. Third sip, silence. He forgot the camera, forgot the woman, forgot why he came. There was only the bowl. Each bite grounded him further, but lifted something else, like memory detaching from reality. His head buzzed, his tongue pulsed. And then, only broth remained. Just one final spoon. He glanced up. The sign above the door was visible from his seat. Do not drink the last spoon. His hand hovered. He laughed under his breath. Cursed soup. Why not? He raised the spoon to his lips and drank. The moment it touched his tongue, the lights flickered. The ceiling fan stopped. The camera screen glitched, just for a frame, then returned. The broth was gone. But the taste lingered, like smoke trapped in his lungs. He blinked. The woman behind the counter was no longer there. The pot was still steaming, but the room had changed. The shadows were darker, the air denser, the silence louder. He stood, called out. No answer. The camera continued recording. He walked to the counter, leaned over. No one. He turned back toward the table, and for a second, just 1 second, in the reflection of the soup spoon resting on the table, he saw something crouched in the corner of the room. Not the woman. Something missing. Then it was gone. He shook it off, packed his gear, stepped outside. The city was waiting again, loud, bright, moving. He exhaled. Later that night, back in his apartment, he uploaded the video and scheduled it to go live at midnight. Title: I found Vietnam's hidden pho, and it's not what you think. He smiled at the thumbnail, then went to bed. And sometime after 3 a.m. in the silence of his dark apartment, as the video quietly climbed in views, he heard something from the corner of the room. Slurp. The first thing Quan noticed when he woke was the taste in his mouth. Metallic, burned, wrong. The second was the silence. It was morning, maybe, but no birds chirped, no distant horns sounded. Hanoi's familiar chaos had vanished, replaced by a stillness so unnatural it felt like the world was holding its breath. He sat up slowly, throat dry, tongue heavy. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Hello?" No one was there, of course, but he'd felt it, in his sleep, or maybe just before, something at the edge of the bed, watching. And then he remembered the noise. Slurping, slow, wet, inhuman. He dismissed it as a dream, a trick of late-night edits, or maybe that third cup of black coffee. Still, a cold film of sweat clung to his neck. He reached for his phone. The screen lit up. 7:13 a.m. There were over 100 notifications. He blinked, opened YouTube. His video, I found Vietnam's hidden pho, and it's not what you think, had gone live just 7 hours ago. It already had 215,000 views. Comments poured in. He clicked open the top one. "This is terrifying. I heard slurping while I watched it." He scrolled. I saw someone behind you at the 8:47 mark in the mirror. I had a nightmare last night after watching this. She was in the corner of my room. Why does it feel like she's watching me now?" And then his eyes landed on a pinned comment. But he hadn't pinned anything. The account had no name, no picture, no link, just 5 words. "You weren't supposed to film her bowl." His stomach turned. He tried to click on the comment. Nothing. Tried to remove it. The button was grayed out. Refreshed the page. Still there. Pinned. Unshakable. His hand hovered over the mouse, unsure what disturbed him more, the words or the fact that YouTube didn't allow that kind of automatic pinning. It had done it on its own. He scrubbed through the video timeline. At 9:14, when he lifts the final spoon, there's a glitch, a single flicker in the frame. He paused it, advanced 1 frame at a time. And then he saw it. In the reflection of the spoon, barely visible, warped by curvature and steam, was something crouched low on the floor, far behind him. A pale shape. A woman. Long hair covering her face. Except half her face wasn't there. Where her jaw should have been was only emptiness, like the bottom half had been scooped out, leaving skin dangling loosely from the upper lip. He sat up slowly, pulse racing. This wasn't marketing. This wasn't myth. This was something real, something present. He left his apartment, didn't change, didn't bring his camera, just keys and adrenaline. He took the alley back to the pho shop, the same twisted path, same mossy walls, same vines curling through concrete like veins. The door was still there, but the sign, the one with the warning, looked older, faded. The red lettering was nearly gone, as if decades of sun had weathered it overnight. He pushed the door open. Dust exploded into the air. The tables were still there, so was the counter, but everything was covered in grime, thick layers of it untouched by hands for years. The shop wasn't open. It hadn't been, not for a very long time. He stepped inside, coughing. A stool collapsed under his foot. The old pot was rusted, cold. But worst of all, on the wall, near where the wooden sign should have been, hung a faded photograph. He stepped closer. It showed the shop, sometime long ago. The same stools, the same counter, the same layout. And behind it, a woman. The same scarf, the same glasses. Only now, her face was clearer, and she didn't have a lower jaw. Outside, Juan stopped a middle-aged man pushing a bicycle. "Excuse me," he asked, voice hoarse. "Do you know what happened to the pho shop here?" The man gave him a puzzled look. "You mean King's place? That's been closed for years, since the old women died." Juan blinked. "No, I ate there yesterday. I filmed it. She served me a bowl." The man shook his head, slow and stern. "She died over 10 years ago. Heart attack. No one's used that building since. But sometimes," he lowered his voice, "people still see steam coming from the windows, smell broth on the wind, hear slurping after midnight." Then he walked away, not looking back. Juan turned back toward the building. The door was still ajar, and as the wind passed through, the wooden sign above creaked, ever so slightly. He could still read the rule, barely. "Do not drink the last spoon." This time, it wasn't a warning. It was a sentence. That night, Juan left every light on. He didn't edit, didn't eat, didn't sleep. He simply sat on the edge of his bed, replaying his video over and over. At 9 minutes, 14 seconds, the glitch appeared, just as he lifted the last spoon. At 9:15, the static. At 9:16, the reflection in the spoon. He paused again, staring into the warped metal shape. The woman was there, still, unmoving. She wasn't part of the room. She wasn't a trick of light. She was looking at him. Even in the reflection, her eyes were locked on his. Her jaw, or lack of it, gaped open in a silent scream, or maybe a whisper. It didn't matter. She was watching. At 2:47 a.m., his phone buzzed. A notification from YouTube. Your video has hit 1 million views. It was the fastest growing post on his channel. But something was off. When he opened the app, the pinned comment had changed. Same blank profile, still unclickable, no name, no icon. New words. The first bow was yours. Who gets the next 11? He frowned. 11? He scrolled to the beginning of his raw footage, not the edited version, the untouched original. At the 4:03 mark, while panning across the counter, the camera briefly showed the back wall, and something he hadn't noticed before. 12 ceramic bowls, lined up perfectly, unused, identical. But he had only ordered one, only seen one. He rewound, paused, zoomed in. Each bowl had a slip of paper tucked beneath it. Names. He couldn't read them. The angle was wrong, but the slips were there, yellowed, handwritten, curling at the edges like offerings. Offerings. The thought hit him hard. The bowls weren't for eating. They were for feeding. He barely registered the sound at first. Slurp. Then again, louder. Slurp. Slurp. His eyes darted to the far corner of the room. The air was thicker there. Not dark, heavy. The kind of darkness that didn't just exist, it leaned. He stood slowly, afraid to blink. The corner was empty. Of course it was. But the sound didn't stop. He opened his laptop again and hit pause on the video. Slurp. Still there. He shut the screen. Slurp. Still there. He pulled his phone from his pocket and turned it off. Slurp. He backed toward the door, fumbled for the hallway light. Nothing. The bulb burst. Pop. Sparks sizzling in the dark. His apartment groaned like it was breathing. From the corner, something began to rise. Not like a person standing, but like steam condensing into shape, dripping into bone, a form built from heat and memory and hunger. And then, she appeared. She didn't walk. She hovered just above the ground, knees bent unnaturally inward, arms slack at her sides. Her hair hung wet around her face. Her eyes bulged, black, wide, glassy. Her skin sagged like melting wax. But it was her mouth, or what was left of it, that made her blood freeze. There was no jaw, no lips, just torn muscle, loose skin, and a tongue that hung like a soaked rag, twitching gently in the air. She stared at him, her head tilted like a broken doll. And then she opened what shouldn't be able to open. A slit beneath her tongue widened. It wasn't a mouth. It was a wound, a second mouth carved deep into her throat. And from it came the sound. Slurp. He tried to scream, but nothing came out. Not even air. He woke up hours later on the floor. Light streamed through the window. The apartment looked normal. Except for the mirror. He caught his reflection as he stood. His eyes were bloodshot, his lips cracked. and on his tongue, carved into the surface like someone had etched it with a razor, was a single word: debt. It pulsed when he breathed. He grabbed his laptop with shaking hands, opened his inbox. Over 4,000 new comments. He scrolled. "This isn't just a video, it's a curse. I watched it, now she's here. Why did you drink the last spoon? My son watched this and hasn't spoken since. There were 12 bowls, are we next?" And then one message, a private one, from a user with no name. "She doesn't just want to be seen, she wants to be fed." Kwon shut the laptop. Outside, the street bustled. Life continued. But deep in his bones, he knew something had changed. The bowls weren't just props. The rule wasn't just a warning. And the last spoon had never belonged to him. It had always belonged to her. The next night, Kwon blocked every window with towels. He left the lights on, unplugged the TV, turned off his phone, shut the laptop. Even his camera, the one that made him famous, now sat in a drawer like a loaded weapon. The only sound in his apartment was the ticking of the wall clock and his breathing. He hadn't slept the night before. Couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, hovering at the edge of the bed, staring with empty sockets and that gaping wound where her jaw should be. And that sound, slurp. It wasn't just heard anymore. He felt it in his spine, in his throat, in his soul. He had tried to eat earlier, a simple bowl of rice. The moment he brought the spoon to his lips, he gagged. His tongue rejected it, like it had forgotten how to accept food. He spat blood into the sink. His reflection in the mirror stared back with cracked lips and gray veins stretching beneath his skin like spider webs. His body was breaking down, and still he wasn't hungry. At 2:59 a.m., the lights flickered. He sat up in bed, fully awake. The towels over the windows began to twitch, not from wind, but as if something behind them was breathing slowly. The ticking of the clock stopped. And then came the slurping. Soft at first. Slurp. Slurp. Then wet. Close. Too close. He turned his head. She was in the room. Not in the corner. Not in the shadows. On the ceiling. Her body was sprawled out like a spider, limbs hanging downward, her tongue stretching toward the floor. Strings of thick saliva dangled from her mouthless face, glistening like melted fat. Her eyes rolled sideways in their sockets and locked onto him. He couldn't move. Not paralyzed, pinned. His chest rose but didn't fall. Breath came in but didn't go out. He felt like soup simmering under her gaze. She slid down the wall, slowly, unnaturally, her knees bending the wrong way, her neck tilting like it had never held a spine. Kwon's mouth opened to scream. Nothing came out. She reached the floor, stood, tilted her head again, and then she opened the second mouth, the one below her throat, a vertical gash that widened like a feeding hole. Out came the tongue, long, gray, blistered, shaped like a ladle. It slithered toward him, drawn not to his face, but to his neck. She leaned closer. He felt the heat of her breath, thick and wet and sour like old broth left too long in a sealed pot. Her tongue pressed against his skin. Slurp. He awoke gasping, drenched in sweat. Morning light seeped through the towels. The apartment smelled like rot. He staggered to the bathroom, flicked on the light. His eyes were sunken, skin pale, but worse than that, his tongue was black. At the center, burned into the flesh, was another word. Not debt this time. But second. Second what? Second bowl? Second victim? Second offering? He didn't know, but his reflection didn't blink when he did. He grabbed his laptop. The video was still up, still growing, 2.3 million views. He scrolled through the comments. I had the dream. She was above me. I woke up and my mouth was bleeding. My brother drank soup last night and passed out. Then, another notification. A new message from the same blank account. She is tasting you, one night at a time. Kwon slammed the laptop shut. The wooden floor beneath him groaned, not from pressure, from hunger. He turned to the wall mirror and saw her. Not behind him, inside the reflection, her head emerging from the back of his throat, eyes wide, tongue out, smiling. Kwon stopped sleeping on purpose. He drank coffee until his hands shook, took cold showers, played loud music at all hours just to drown out the silence. But none of it worked. Sleep still came, uninvited, heavy, and slow like steam filling a kitchen. And every time it did, so did she. The first night he truly dreamed of her, he was lying in bed, except it wasn't his apartment. It looked the same, the desk, the lamp, the towels nailed over the windows. But everything was wrong. Colors were too muted. Shadows clung to the corners like mold. The air was thick with the smell of boiling marrow. He tried to move but couldn't. His limbs were lead. From the far side of the room, he heard the same sound that haunted him since the video went live. Slurp. Then another. Slurp. He turned his head toward the noise. She was crouched by the foot of the bed, perfectly still, like she had been waiting. She wasn't fully formed, not yet. Her skin was patchy, thin in some places, revealing what looked like bone underneath. Her long, wet hair stuck to her face like seaweed. She didn't move, she didn't speak, but he understood. She was measuring him. Each night after that, she came closer. In the second dream, she was kneeling beside his bed, slurping something from a bowl in the dark. He couldn't see what it was, but he could smell it. Sour, metallic, ancient. In the third, she was sitting on his chest, staring directly into his eyes, her mouthless face somehow smiling. By the fourth night, he wasn't just dreaming about her, he was dreaming through her. He saw through her eyes, walking down alleys, crawling beneath floorboards, slipping into dark rooms where screens glowed with his video. She was watching his viewers, one by one, waiting for them to fall asleep. Sometimes, when she found one who had finished a bowl of soup that day, she would smile wider. They were easier to reach. He woke one morning with his sheets soaked in sweat and a spoon in his hand. Not from his kitchen, not metal, ceramic, identical to the one from the pho shop. His mouth was bleeding. He checked the mirror. There was no wound, but his teeth were slightly looser, as if something had been tugging at them. The video was now nearing 4 million views. More comments poured in. Why do I wake up with broth on my pillow? I dreamed she was inside me. This isn't just a video anymore, it's a ritual. He scrolled until he found it. The same pinned comment, same blank profile, but now the words had changed again. You fed her, now she feeds on you. His laptop fan began to spin louder and then let out a strange wheeze. The screen flickered. The video began playing on its own. This time, it wasn't the footage he had uploaded. It was a new scene, shot from above. It showed Kwon sleeping in his bed from the ceiling, and in the corner of the frame, curled up like a hungry child, she was watching. By the end of the week, Kwan's video had crossed 6 million views. It was everywhere, trending across platforms, shared in horror forums, featured in reaction videos titled things like "The Most Cursed Food Review on the Internet" and "Do Not Watch This Alone." People were obsessed. And then, people went quiet. At first, it was just comments. "My brother won't eat anymore, not since watching this. I woke up with soup on my bed sheets. I live alone. There's a smell in my apartment, like something's boiling under the floor." Then came the videos. Short, shaky recordings posted by viewers. One showed a woman sitting upright in bed, eyes open, whispering, "She's hungry, she's hungry, she's hungry," until her voice cracked into static. Another showed a boy standing motionless in front of a bathroom mirror at 3 a.m. Behind him, barely visible in the shower glass, was a figure crouched low. But the worst? A live stream. 38 seconds long. The screen was dark. A man's voice whispered, "I drank the last spoon." And then came the sound. Slurp. And then a scream. Cut to black. The account was deleted within minutes. Kwan watched them all. He didn't want to, but he couldn't stop. Every new clip pulled him deeper. Every comment made him feel more responsible. Because they were following him, reenacting what he did, finishing their bowls. And somehow, she was using the video as a door. He tried to delete it. Again. This time, he didn't just remove the post. He tried to erase the entire YouTube channel. He clicked Delete Channel. It asked for confirmation. He typed his password, clicked again, loading, and then, error 451, content cannot be removed. He blinked. That wasn't a standard code. The screen flickered, reloaded. The video was still there. Pinned comment unchanged. She is watching through every screen. He opened his inbox. A message from Ming, his friend, the tech expert. Subject: "This isn't just you anymore." Inside was a screenshot of a private Discord server. Hundreds of users sharing similar dreams, all describing the same woman. Missing jaw, slurping sounds, waking up with soup on their bedsheets, living alone. And some had even started offering bowls of soup at their doorsteps at night, not to eat, but to keep her away. Ming had traced metadata from the video's spread. Something was wrong. He explained that once Kwan uploaded the footage, it didn't just distribute, it duplicated itself. Across platforms, across drives, even offline. People were finding the file on their computers without downloading it, as if it was planting itself. The next night, Kwan had the dream again. But this time, it wasn't his room. It was someone else's. He floated above a child's bed. The boy was sleeping, curled on his side. And beside him, she crouched. Her hair hung low. Her arms were longer now. Her skin was darker, her spine arched higher. She wasn't feeding, not yet. She was waiting. Kwan tried to scream in the dream to warn the boy, but the moment he opened his mouth, broth poured out. Hot, steaming broth like it had boiled there for hours. He woke choking, gasping, drenched in sweat. In the morning, he opened YouTube one last time. 8.4 million views. The title of the video had changed. He didn't do it, but now, instead of "I found Vietnam's hidden pho," it read, "She found you." Gwen stopped looking at the view count. It didn't matter anymore. The video was beyond him, beyond control, beyond platform. It was no longer content. It was a conduit, a ritual in motion, and it was working. He hadn't left the apartment in days, not because he couldn't, but because he was afraid of what might follow him outside, what might already be out there. He covered every reflective surface. He stopped drinking water. He stopped speaking. His tongue felt raw, swollen, as if it had grown into someone else's. There were new words carved into it each morning, sometimes a number, sometimes a name. Today, it said 9. He opened YouTube again, just once, to check the comment section. Same pinned comment, same blank profile. But the words had changed again. 1 bowl, 12 names. You are the 9th. He scrolled down. Something strange had started to happen in the replies. Under the pinned comment, people were posting single words, usernames, names of friends, family, even pets, and then replying to themselves with timestamps. 6:01 a.m., slurping under my bed. 2:44 a.m., she took my sister's name. 1:12 a.m., the mirror won't show my face anymore. And every few minutes, one of the usernames vanished. Not deleted, erased, like it had never existed. Even the comment count dropped, and the number under the pinned comment would update. 10, then 11. Gwen's heart raced. He opened the raw footage again, the first video, scrubbed to the point where the bowl first appeared on screen. He had always thought it was just his bowl, but now he paused and zoomed in. 12 bowls on the shelf behind the counter, each with a folded slip of paper underneath. The camera's depth of field made most of the writing impossible to read, except one. Faint, blurred, but still visible when he sharpened the contrast. It read, Quen. He stumbled backwards from the screen, knocked over a glass. The sound echoed longer than it should have, as if the walls were listening. He turned to the mirror, the one he had forgotten to cover, and for a moment, he didn't see himself. He saw a row of bowls, each with names written in red, each gently steaming, and in the center, an empty bowl, waiting. He slammed the mirror with a chair. Glass shattered across the floor, but in the shards, the reflections lingered, not of his apartment, not of his body, but of her. Crouched, staring, her tongue gently lapping at an invisible bowl. His inbox chimed, a new message from the same blank account. Subject: 12 is tradition, but 13 tastes better. No text, just an image. It was a screenshot from his video, but he had never seen this frame before. In it, he was drinking the final spoon, and behind him, far in the background, in the doorway to the fur shop, stood 11 shadowy figures, all crouched, all facing the camera, all watching. And in the center, almost fully formed now, her body rising taller, her eyes clearer, her tongue longer. She was smiling. The file name of the image: Last Spoon Quen 13.png. Guan didn't remember deciding to go back. He only realized where he was when he stepped into the alley. The noise of Hanoi faded behind him like it always did, swallowed by narrow walls and memories no one wanted. The vines had crept higher since his last visit. The cracked concrete beneath his feet felt softer now, like it had been walked on from below. He was trembling, holding nothing but his phone. No camera, no mic, no plan. Only a question. Why is she still here? At the end of the alley stood the green metal door, exactly as he remembered it. Except it shouldn't be. He had seen it just days ago, rusted shut, the shop abandoned for years. But now, it looked freshly painted. The wooden sign above the door had no rot. The lettering was crisp. Fo Ong King, since 1971. And beneath it, do not drink the last spoon. The red paint looked wet, still drying. Kwon stepped forward. The doorknob turned easily. Inside, the lights were on. The tables were clean, the floors polished. Steam rose gently from behind the counter, carrying that same impossible scent. Bone broth, burnt ginger, star anise, and something else. Something sweet and wrong. The room was empty. No sound, no movement, no woman. But on the wall, right where the shelves had been in the footage, sat 12 ceramic bowls, each one placed with care, each one filled with broth, still warm, still steaming, each one with a slip of paper beneath it. He walked closer, step by slow step. The slips had names. He recognized some, usernames from his comment section. Slurp Slowly 76, Mirror Guest 13, Not Alone Now, Q Noi 90, and then the 9th bowl, his own, Kwon. The paper was damp. The broth inside the bowl was darker than the others, thicker. A thin film floated on the surface like skin. He turned back toward the door. It was gone. Not just closed, gone. The wall was solid now, seamless. The shop had sealed itself. The light dimmed. The air grew hotter. He turned back to the bowls, but there were only 11. His was gone. A noise rose from behind the counter, the sound of a chair scraping across tile. Then, soft, slow, deliberate footsteps. Kwon backed away. His hands trembled. And then she stepped out. She looked different now, taller, stronger. Her bones no longer jutted through her skin. Her body had weight, presence, shape. But her face was worse. Where once there was only a missing jaw, now there was a wide, unnatural grin stitched into place with black thread. Her head tilted to the side as she stared at him. Her hands held a new bowl, empty, ceramic, waiting. She extended it toward him, offered it. A spoon floated inside, just one. He didn't take it. Couldn't. Instead, he turned and ran straight into the wall where the door had once been. To his surprise, his body passed through it, like paper through smoke. He tumbled into the alley. Cold air hit him like a slap. The door behind him was gone. The shop was no longer there, just a crumbling brick wall and broken weeds. No sign, no green door, no bowls. Just a single spoon lying on the ground, still wet. The spoon sat at his feet, ceramic, still wet. Kwon stared at it for a long time, afraid to touch it, afraid to leave it. In the end, he wrapped it in his jacket and carried it home like a cursed artifact, which, by now, he knew it was. That night, he didn't sleep. He didn't even try. He placed the spoon on his desk under a lamp and stared at it like it might speak. In a way, it already had. His laptop was still open. The video had crossed 9 million views. But something had changed. The title was no longer "She Found You." Now it simply read, "She's Still Hungry." The pinned comment remained, but there was new text beneath it. A list. It hadn't been there before. 12 lines, each with a number, a name, a timestamp, a location. Mirror guest 13, 0112 a.m., Ho Chi Minh City. NGUUNH, 0244 a.m., Hanoi. Slurp Slowly 76, 1207 a.m., Da Nang. Nameless Fold, 0333 a.m., Singapore. QNGUEN 90, 0155 a.m., Melbourne. Walk Without Shadow, 0223 a.m., Bangkok. Gutted Pixel, 0102 a.m., Manila. Quan, 0303 a.m., Hanoi. Empty, empty, empty. 3 empty spaces remained. He stared at his own name, number 9, a timestamp, the exact moment he had first heard the slurping in the corner of his room. He highlighted his name, tried to delete it. It wouldn't move, wouldn't even select. He clicked away. The list refreshed, and the 10th name appeared. 10. Fork Devoured, 0211 a.m., London. Korn's stomach dropped. He refreshed again. 11. Willow Static, 0137 a.m., San Francisco. Only one name remained. One blank space. He reached for his phone. Dialed Min. Voicemail. He called again. Still nothing. He opened their chat history. No response since the message, "This isn't just you anymore." But now, at the bottom of the thread, a new message had appeared, unread, no timestamp. Just one word. 12. He called again, straight to voicemail. He dropped the phone. On a desperate impulse, he opened the ceramic spoon. Under a magnifying glass, he saw something etched into the glaze, tiny, almost invisible. It was a list of 12 dates, all spread out across the past decade, all at different times of year, different phases of the moon, different lunar months. But one thing they shared, each date coincided with a missing person case. He looked them up. Every name matched a viral food video uploaded within 24 hours of their disappearance. None of the videos were online anymore. Archived, removed, banned. But each one had the same description in old forums. A hidden eatery, a perfect bowl. No one ever found the restaurant again. No one ever found them. His hands trembled. He was part of a cycle. Not the first, not special, just next. Then he saw something else. One of the archived posts linked to a comment, barely legible, posted years ago under an unrelated video. It read, "She must eat 12 souls before she sleeps. The bowls keep her bound. But each time someone forgets the rule, each time someone finishes the last spoon." There was a reply. One word. 13? Kun sat back in his chair. The list was full now. The 12th name had appeared. 12. Reader unknown. 02 a.m. Location unlisted. No icon. No profile. Just a blank silhouette. No one could click on it. He refreshed the page. His name was gone. So were all the others. The list had reset. 12 blanks. And beneath the list, a new line of text appeared. Another bowl is ready. Kwon knew he couldn't run. He had tried. He had turned off the internet, smashed his phone, deleted everything he could. But the video kept returning. To devices he hadn't touched, to screens he didn't own, to people he had never met. She had spread beyond him now, slurping, silent, invisible, waiting for the 12th to dream, and the 13th to open the door again. He needed to understand what she was, or what she used to be. He went to the only place that still respected silence, a temple far outside the city, half forgotten, half swallowed by forest. It wasn't the kind that tourists visited. There were no signs, no gift shops, just smoke, stone, and centuries. Inside, an old monk sat beneath an incense coil still burning from yesterday. Kwon bowed, sat opposite him, and told the story. He didn't use modern words, not views or YouTube or trending. He described what mattered. A meal that shouldn't be finished, a woman without a mouth, a bowl that feeds more than hunger, a spoon that draws spirits like blood, a curse that moves through attention. The monk listened. When Kwon was finished, the old man poured a cup of tea, placed it between them, and said only this: "You drank what belonged to the dead." Kwon stared at him. The monk continued, voice slow and warm, like a story told through fog. In the old ways, we always left a spoon for the hungry spirits. The last sip was not for the living. It was for those who could not pass on, the forgotten, the restless, the drowned. They drink it and rest. But if someone takes it, the spirit returns in thirst, and she never forgets the taste of the one who stole from her. Kwon whispered, "How do I undo it?" The monk looked him in the eyes. "You can't undo the hunger, but you can give her what she's owed." The ritual required 3 things: a bowl of broth cooked without shortcuts, fire, not machines, bones that simmered for hours, nothing instant, nothing false, a spoon placed into the bowl by someone who believes, and finally, the offering. Not money, not prayers, but silence, total silence during the act of serving. The monk's voice turned low. "Do not speak, do not film, do not think of sharing it, do not even say her name. If she accepts the offering, she will drink and sleep. If she does not..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. That night, Kwon cooked. Not in his kitchen. It had gone cold, soulless. He lit charcoal in the alley behind his apartment, crouched beside a dented pot, and boiled bones for 6 hours in the dark. No light, no music, no phone. Just heat, just time. When the broth turned golden, he stirred in ginger, onions, herbs. Nothing instant. He poured it into a white ceramic bowl, the same kind he had seen in the shop. He used the same spoon he'd found in the alley, now scrubbed clean. And when it was ready, he didn't taste it. He carried the bowl to the intersection at the end of the alley, a place where 3 roads met, a place of crossing. He set the bowl down gently in the center and waited. The wind didn't blow. No dogs barked. No voices called. Silence folded around him like a burial shroud. Then, A sound, not footsteps, dragging, cloth against pavement, fingernails on stone. He didn't turn around. The monk had warned him, if you look at her before she drinks, she will look back through you. He kept his eyes closed. He heard her stop in front of the bowl. He felt the heat change as if the night were inhaling. Then, slurp. Slow, deliberate, endless. She drank, not with lips, not with hands, but with presence. Slurp. The ground vibrated, the air thickened, his nose began to bleed. Slurp. Then, silence. Total silence, as if the alley had never existed. He opened his eyes. The bowl was gone. So was the spoon. In their place, a small folded piece of paper. He picked it up. It was blank, until the blood from his nose dripped onto it. Then words began to appear, rising from the page like ink through skin. 12 names, all crossed out. No number 13.
For the first time in weeks, Gun slept. No slurping, no shadows, no blood on the sheets. He woke just after dawn to the sound of birds, real ones, chirping on the windowsill. His tongue didn't burn. His throat was whole. The mirror didn't warp his reflection. The silence was over. And yet, something about the quiet unnerved him more than the horror ever had, because it felt like relief. And relief, he had learned, was usually just a breath before drowning. The folded paper still sat on his desk. 12 names, each one crossed out in a different stroke, like someone had slowly, lovingly erased each soul. His was last on the list. Gun stared at it. He should have felt closure, or peace, or even guilt, but all he felt was numb. He opened his laptop. The video was gone. Not just removed, gone. Deleted from history. No backups, no cached copies, not even a trace in the Wayback Machine, as if it had never existed. He searched the names on the paper. No results, no social media, no profiles, nothing. Every one of them erased. Even Ming, even himself. He typed Gun food vlogger into Google. Nothing. He wasn't there. That night, he dreamed again. It began like a memory. The faux shop, the first time, steam rising from the bowl, the spoon, the sign, do not drink the last spoon. But something was different. The room was darker, the tables were closer, and he wasn't alone. Across from him sat another man, younger, foreign, holding a phone, filming. I found this hidden noodle shop in Hanoi. They say it's been closed for years, but it's definitely still serving. Gun tried to speak, tried to warn him, but he couldn't move, couldn't blink, couldn't scream. He could only watch. The man on screen took his first sip, then another, then the final spoon. The room glitched, the steam warped, and behind him, she appeared, the woman with no jaw. But now, her face was full, whole, and smiling. Gun jolted awake. He was still in bed, still breathing, still alone. But his phone buzzed beside him. A new video had just gone viral. He didn't recognize the channel, but the thumbnail was all too familiar. A white bowl, a glistening spoon, a shadow behind the counter. Title: The Best Foe in Hanoi. Do not finish the broth. Already at 800,000 views. Already trending. Already shared. Kuhn's hands trembled as he scrolled to the comments section. No pinned comment. Not yet. But the top comment read, "Did anyone else hear slurping?" The second, "I thought this place was shut down years ago." The third, "I dreamed of a woman crouched by my bed. She didn't have a face." And the fourth, "Don't film her bowl." No profile, no name, no picture. Just the loop beginning again. Kuhn closed the app. His reflection blinked before he did. He stared at it for a long time, then walked to the kitchen and began to boil bones.
"I just wanted soup." That's what Derek kept repeating to himself as he stared at the half-empty bowl on his hotel nightstand. He was an American tourist, first time in Vietnam, obsessed with local eats. Always followed the hidden foodie TikTok crowd, even when it led to strange alleyways and unmarked doors. The place didn't even have a name, just a red curtain, a chalkboard, and a bowl already waiting when he sat down. There were no menus, no servers, just the broth. Rich, murky, fragrant. He couldn't describe it, like it had depth, like it had secrets. And then, the spoon. He remembered a strange urge to finish it, all of it, even when his lips began to sting, even when the back of his throat felt like it had been scraped raw with hot iron. He finished the last drop anyway. And now he couldn't taste anything. Back in his hotel room, Derek chugged a bottle of water. His tongue still burned. He checked the mirror. No swelling, no cuts, no sign of allergy. But the skin on his tongue looked wrong. Too smooth, too pale, too clean, like something had licked it back. That night, he woke to the sound of breathing. Not snoring, not wheezing. Wet, gurgling, close. The sound came from the foot of the bed. He sat up. Nothing. Just the shadows and the half-finished bowl of pho on the nightstand. He told himself it was the AC, that maybe he was catching a cold. He turned over and found the spoon under his pillow, still warm. The next morning, he tried to vlog his next meal, but when he pressed record, the phone glitched. His voice didn't sync. Every word sounded like it was spoken backward. When he played the clip, he didn't hear his own voice at all. He heard slurping, over and over, wet, close, greedy. He checked his tongue again. Now it was blistered, but it didn't hurt. Nothing hurt anymore. He tried to leave the city that afternoon, booked a bus out, but when the driver saw his face, he frowned. "You're the guy from the video," he said. Derek shook his head. "What video?" The man pulled up TikTok. There it was, a new upload from an anonymous account. Same bowl, same shop, but the person eating in the video, it was Derek. Only his eyes were gone, burned out. And someone, something, was crouching behind him in the steam. That night, the dreams began. He wasn't in bed anymore. He was in the shop, alone, except for the woman. She had no eyes, no skin on her jaw, no spoon. She crawled across the counter and opened her mouth, and inside was a row of tiny spoons, all of them used, all of them familiar, all of them his. He woke choking. On blood? No, on broth. It poured from his mouth as if he'd been filled, stuffed. His body didn't feel like it was his anymore. He walked to the bathroom mirror.
And for the first time, his reflection smiled without him.
He called it Project Resurrection. Min, a rising star chef from Ho Chi Minh City, had seen the video, the one with the eyeless man eating pho. It went viral for the wrong reasons. Cursed food, they said. Deep fake, others scoffed. But Min, he saw perfection. That broth, the way the steam clung to the screen, the texture, the color, the haunting hunger in the man's final bite. He became obsessed. He had to replicate it. Min spent weeks reverse engineering the dish. He paused the video frame by frame, took screenshots of the ingredients, compared the hue of the broth to every regional style in Vietnam. Nothing matched. It wasn't northern, it wasn't southern, it wasn't earthly. Then he noticed something odd. Every video of that dish, including clips posted by anonymous accounts, had a strange audio glitch. When isolated, the background noise wasn't just steam. It was whispers, low, inhuman, chanting. He ran it through an audio spectrogram. The waveform formed a pattern. It looked like a sigil. Min was no mystic, but obsession overrides logic. He traced the sigil in his notebook, and beneath, words formed on their own. Boil the broth with memory, salt it with silence, feed it to the forgotten. He laughed, then stopped, because when he touched the page, it was wet, and it smelled like broth. That night, he cooked, not in his restaurant, in the back of his grandmother's abandoned house where no one could interrupt. He used bones, herbs, star anise, cinnamon, but also things not found in any cookbook: a lock of hair, soaked diary pages, a strip of old photo negatives. The broth turned black, then red, then clear. Clear like glass, and it hummed. He tasted it. One spoon. Everything blurred. His childhood, his worst fears, every lie he ever told. And behind all of it, a woman, not real, not human. She leaned over his shoulder and whispered, "Almost perfect." Then she licked his ear. Min woke up hours later on the floor. The pot was empty. The air was cold. His tongue was split, as if burned by acid and stitched back together by spiders. His reflection smiled without him, and in the mirror behind him, someone stirred the broth. He rushed to burn the notebook, but it wouldn't light. The paper breathed. It whispered, "One more spoon, one more guest, then the kitchen opens." Min no longer cooked for customers. He cooked for guests. And not the kind who walked in through the front door. They came through the mirrors, through the steam, through him. Every time he boiled the broth, a face would form. Sometimes a child's, sometimes an old man's, sometimes his own. And always, always, she was watching. The woman with no pupils, no lips, only teeth. They called her Ba Tia in whispers, the Spoon Lady. Some said she was once a kitchen maid in a warlord's palace, boiled alive after being accused of poisoning his son. Her scream never stopped.
So they sealed her voice in the broth and her hunger in a silver spoon. Others said she was never human, that she feeds on memory, and cooking is how she lures people into offering their own past, diced, simmered, and served. Whatever the truth was, Min no longer cared, because now he was her chef. He opened the secret kitchen. No signs, no reservations. You found it only if she wanted you to. People came, drawn by dreams, whispers, a scent they couldn't name but needed. They sat down. They ate. They never left the same. One customer, a blind woman, cried after one bite. "My son," she whispered, "I can taste his voice." Another man vomited blood after his third spoon. "I remember dying, but I never died." The kitchen changed shape. Some nights it had 4 walls, other nights none. The utensils rearranged themselves. Knives floated when no one touched them, and the spoons were always warm, like they just came out of someone's mouth. Then came the night the kitchen opened fully. It was raining. Thunder cracked like splitting bone. Min prepared the broth as usual. Only this time, when the final chant ended, the stove whispered, "She is here." The walls peeled, the ceiling melted, and through the boiling pot, a staircase of bone emerged. At the top stood Batia, no longer watching. Now she was hungry. She stepped down slowly, spoon in hand, not silver, but skin, woven and wet, still warm. She pointed at Min. He fell to his knees, his hands trembling, his mouth open in terror or worship. "Chef," she said. Her voice sounded like 1,000 knives being sharpened at once. "The table is set." The first knock wasn't on the door. It came from the walls. A slow, wet tapping, like knuckles against meat. Min didn't move. He was still on the floor, mouth dry, hands sticky with broth and blood. Bautier had vanished, but the spoon remained, twitching on the counter. Then the second knock. This time from inside the refrigerator. It groaned, then swung open by itself. Steam spilled out, not cold, hot. Inside, the vegetables had turned to ash, and where the beef used to be, a severed tongue, pierced with a wooden skewer. It pulsed, as if tasting the air. Then, finally, the front door opened. No hand touched it. It just creaked, slow, patient. And they walked in, the guests. They weren't quite human anymore. They wore the same clothes they had when they first visited, but their skin sagged, their eyes were hollow bowls, their mouths always open, dripping soup that hissed when it hit the floor. Min recognized them all. The blind woman, the man who remembered dying, even the boy who asked for seconds. They took their seats, one by one. No words, only the sound of spoons clinking softly, in rhythm. Clink, 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 as if waiting. Min stood behind the counter, legs numb. The air was thick, the light flickered, and the pot began to boil. He didn't turn on the stove. It boiled on its own. One guest finally spoke. Her voice was 3 voices, layered, broken. "Chef, we're hungry again." Another leaned forward, skin flaking into the soup. "But we want something new." Min looked at the ladle in his hand, then at the spoon on the counter, then at the staircase where Batier had stood. The floor cracked. The table stretched longer, like dough being kneaded by unseen hands. And behind the guests, the wall opened. A new room, full of empty chairs. A voice whispered from inside his skull, "The living are next." The kitchen was no longer a place to cook. It was a gateway, a dining hall between worlds. Min was no longer a chef. He was the host. And the guests were coming, not to eat, but to feed her. The ladle trembled in Min's hand. The broth had changed. It no longer smelled like beef or herbs. It smelled like rain on old stone, like pages of forgotten journals, like a child's last dream. Each time Min stirred the pot, something floated to the top. Not ingredients, memories. The first bowl he served was to the blind woman. He didn't remember ladling it. His arms moved by themselves. In the broth, a tiny, broken music box, rusted shut. The woman reached for it blindly, tears dripping into the bowl. "That was mine," she whispered. "My father gave it to me before he died in the flood." Min blinked. He had never known that, but the soup did. The second bowl went to the man with the scarred tongue. Floating in his soup, a folded photograph, black and white, burned at the corners. The man's lips moved, reciting a name Min had never heard. "She was my wife, before the fire." He drank the soup, and for a second, his tongue healed. He smiled. Then the flesh split again, wider. The third bowl Min served to an empty chair, but the soup still filled itself. Inside it, a tiny pink ribbon. The air grew colder. Min's head throbbed. Something inside him cracked. He turned to the stove. Steam now formed shapes, faces, crying out silently. One looked like his mother. The scent of lemongrass vanished, replaced by something sour and metallic, like loss, like guilt. A spoon dipped into the pot, but Min hadn't moved. It was Batier's hand, thin, veined, trembling. She stirred without looking and whispered, "You can't serve what you don't remember." Min's knees buckled. His hands gripped the edge of the counter. Images flashed in his mind, quick and sharp. A boy under a table crying. A fire. A scream. A locked door. A kitchen with no windows. He looked at the guests. Now he didn't recognize them. But they knew him. They smiled with empty mouths, teeth clicking softly. "You cooked for us before. You just don't remember." He turned back to the pot, stared deep into the broth, and saw himself. Not now, but younger, terrified, covered in soot, holding a cleaver. Then the soup whispered in a voice that was his own, "You weren't always the chef. You were the first dish,
The bell above the door rang, but no one had entered. Min turned. The dining room had changed. The walls had pulled back. The single wooden table now stretched longer, far longer, disappearing into the dark. More chairs appeared on their own, old and mismatched. Some still had dried blood on the legs. Others were carved with names Min didn't recognize. And yet, he knew every single one. The lights above flickered, not the usual warm bulbs. Now they were swaying lanterns, the kind used at funerals. The walls of the restaurant rippled like fabric, showing images instead of paint. A girl drowning in a bathtub. A woman lying beside a half-eaten bowl of pho. A boy running through a forest with chopsticks in his pocket. A hand gripping a spoon that melted into bone. More guests were arriving, but they didn't come through the door. They appeared, seated, as if they had always been there. Each one stared at Min, silent, waiting. Some had faces, some had masks, some had no heads at all. Bathia stood beside him, calm, still, stirring. She didn't look at the guests. She looked at Min. "The table always grows," she said. "Grief stretches it. Regret feeds it. Memory keeps it warm." He backed away, but the floor moved with him, like the entire restaurant had become a living thing, inhaling slowly, waiting. He looked down at his own hands. They were not hands anymore. They were becoming utensils, bone ladles, blackened spatulas, iron claws shaped like whisks. His reflection in the silver tray nearby had no eyes, only steam where the sockets should be. Then he heard it, a voice from far, far down the table, soft, childlike. "Einhai?" Min froze. That voice, he hadn't heard it in 15 years. He began walking, down the endless table, past the guests, past bowls of steaming broth that whispered his name, toward the end of the table, where someone was waiting. He passed a woman weeping over her soup. It turned to worms when her tears touched it. He passed a man whose head sank lower each time he sipped until it floated in his bowl. He passed himself, seated halfway down, grinning with burned lips. Finally, he reached it, the last seat, the smallest chair, empty. But beside it, a bowl with a plastic spoon, blue, with the letters M-I-N-H scratched into the handle. The broth was still steaming, and in it, a paper boat, floating, soggy, torn. "You were supposed to eat with me," the child's voice whispered again. "But you forgot." The table creaked. It grew again, splitting the floor, crashing through walls, extending into the dark where no walls existed. He turned. The restaurant was gone. Now there was only the table, only the guests, only the soup, and a chair waiting for him. Min didn't sit. He couldn't. The chair at the end of the table pulsed as if it breathed, waiting for him to take his place. But something told him not to. So he turned, and the restaurant was back. The guests vanished. Only Bathier remained, standing by the prep counter. In her hand, a ladle
carved from bone. She didn't smile anymore. Her face was blank, her apron now soaked in black broth. And the mirror behind her, the one Min had never noticed before, began to ripple. It wasn't glass, it was boiling soup, but it reflected perfectly. And in that reflection, Min didn't see himself. He saw a child, 8 years old, holding a spoon, crying, wearing the same shirt his little brother had worn that day they argued. "It was just a stupid spoon," Min whispered, stepping closer to the mirror. But the child in the mirror raised its head, and it wasn't his brother. It was him. His face as a child, but distorted, eyes hollow, skin cracked like old porcelain, and in its hand, the spoon had fused to the fingers, metal growing through flesh, mouth sewn shut with noodle threads. The mirror began to whisper, "Feed me. Finish it. You left him. Now you serve." Min stumbled back. The kitchen came alive. The knives trembled in the drawer. The cutting board bled. The rice cooker opened its lid like a yawning mouth. And the pot on the stove, it wasn't water boiling. It was memory. Images rose in the steam. A small coffin being lowered. A photo of a boy with a spoon in his pocket. And Min, older, ignoring every anniversary. "You never remembered his favorite dish," said Bathier softly, behind him now. "But he remembered yours." She handed him a bowl. Inside, steaming fur, but instead of meat, there were slices of regret and a floating eyeball. His. Min screamed, ran, but the door was gone. Only mirrors. Every wall now reflected his younger self sitting, eating, weeping, all holding spoons, all staring at him, all mouthing the same word, "Stay." The real spoon in Min's pocket began to heat up. He pulled it out. It was melting, becoming liquid memory dripping into his hands. He stared down at his palms. He saw the day he pushed his brother, the way he slammed the door, the soup spilled, the scream that never came because it was too late. The kitchen lights flicked dark, except the mirror. It glowed. One last message appeared in the steam. All chefs taste their own dish eventually. Min looked up. The mirror didn't reflect anymore. It opened, like a mouth, and from it the boy stepped out, not fully formed, half bone, half broth, spoon in hand, and he pointed at Min's chest, where his heart should be. "You're next." The kitchen was silent. The boy made of bone and broth had vanished into the shadows, but his presence lingered, thick like steam that chokes. Min stood in front of the counter. On it, ingredients he didn't recognize. Not meat, not vegetables, but a strip of yellowed photograph, a clump of black hair tied in red thread, a small jar of laughter sealed with wax, and a nail from a child's coffin. Above all that, a stained note was pinned to the wall. To be forgiven, one must feed what was forgotten. A cookbook appeared, bound in skin, no title. It opened itself to a page written in something dark and still wet. The final dish. Min's hands moved without his control. He diced the memory, boiled the guilt, roasted the apologies he never made. Everything smelled wrong, sweet but sickly. He stirred, and with each swirl, a voice whispered in his ear, not in Vietnamese, not in any language spoken by the living, but he understood. This is not for them. This is for the ones who wait beneath your skin. The broth began to pull memories from him. He saw himself, ignoring his brother's birthday, throwing away the broken spoon, leaving the family altar untouched for years. Each forgotten act sank into the broth and hissed. The pot grew heavier, the smell more human. A bell rang. Not the kitchen bell, but the cemetery bell. Min turned. Every table in the restaurant was now occupied, but not by people, not really. They were all versions of his brother. 100 faces, 100 moments he missed. Each held a cracked ceramic bowl, empty, waiting. Ba Tia stood by the pass. She said, "Serve it." Min's legs shook, but he obeyed. He poured the soup into each bowl, and as he did, the room filled with sound, but not chewing, not slurping, crying. Each version of his brother, from toddler to teen, wept as they ate. Some softly, some violently. One choked, but none stopped. They devoured every drop. Then silence. They looked up, one by one, their eyes no longer full of blame, just hunger, finally gone. And they faded, not into mist, but into spoons. Each clattered gently onto the table, still warm. Ba Tian nodded. "You have fed the forgotten. Now feed yourself." She handed him the last bowl. Min stared into it. It was clear. No meat, no memory, just reflection. His face, but no longer his. His eyes had turned silver, his fingers bone white. He looked like the next chef. "You're not leaving, are you, Ba Tia?" She shook her head slowly. "I never left. I only watched. Now I rest." She stepped back, faded into steam. Only her apron remained. Min picked it up, tied it around his waist. He looked at the spoon in his hand. The metal was cold, but it fit perfectly now, as if it had always been part of him. The prep light flicked on. The next order slid in. It simply read, "New guest, table for one." And the door opened. A young man stepped in, confused, hungry, looking for something he couldn't name. Men smiled. "Welcome. Have a seat. First time here?" The air in the kitchen had changed. No longer thick with grief, but still, unnaturally still. Ming stood by the pass, staring at the order slip that had just arrived. It was blank. No name, no dish, just a stain shaped like a tear. He waited. No bell rang, no pot boiled. The guest at table 1 had eaten in silence. He hadn't touched the spoon. He hadn't spoken. When Ming looked out, the man was staring directly at him, with eyes like his brother's, but older, like someone who remembered everything Ming tried to forget. The guest raised a hand, summoning, but not for food. Ming stepped out from the kitchen. His feet felt heavier with every step, like each tile was remembering a step he didn't take years ago. The man at the table spoke at last. "Do you remember me?" Ming nodded slowly. He didn't know the name, but he knew the guilt. "You fed us, all of us, the forgotten, the broken, but you never fed yourself." Ming looked down at his apron. The blood had dried, the broth stains had faded, but the fabric was now woven with whispers. They pulsed with hunger. "You cooked memories," the man continued. "You seasoned them with regret. But the last recipe was always meant for you." Ming felt it then, a tug inside his chest, a hollow ache, like something was missing from him, or like something had been taken long ago. He returned to the kitchen. The blank order slip had changed. Words now appeared on the page, burned in as if seared by fire. The recipe without a name serves one soul, cooked with the truth. Best served warm. Do not eat unless ready. Ming hesitated, then opened the last drawer in the kitchen. Inside, a bundle of old letters never sent, his brother's broken toy car, a spoon with a crack through the center, and a small mirror wrapped in cloth. He placed them all on the counter. These were not ingredients, these were confessions. He lit the stove, for the first time, not to cook, but to burn. One by one, the items went into the flame, not to destroy, but to release. As they burned, the air filled with voices, some forgiving, some pleading, some just crying. The fire turned blue, then white, then gone. Only a bowl remained. In it, clear soup. No scent, no color, just warmth and truth. Ming carried the bowl to the table. The man, the guest, smiled sadly, but didn't reach for it. This one is yours. Ming sat down, took the spoon, sipped, and everything returned. He remembered the way his brother laughed when Ming made noodles from rainwater, the night he locked the kitchen door and pretended not to hear the knocking, the moment he chose forgetting over forgiving. It all came back, but instead of drowning him, it healed. One tear fell into the bowl. The soup shimmered. The guest stood. "You're free now." Ming looked up. "So what happens to the restaurant?" The man tilted his head. "Someone else will come. Someone with guilt in their pockets and hunger in their bones. You gave them a place to remember. Now it's time to go." The door opened behind Ming, but no wind entered, only light, soft, golden, smelling faintly of lemongrass and home. Ming stood, removed the apron, folded it, placed it on the counter, then turned to the light. He didn't look back. The kitchen waited, still, quiet. Then, the bell above the door rang. A new customer stepped in, carrying an old spoon, looking for something they didn't know how to name. The restaurant was ready, and somewhere, deep in its walls, Ming was still stirring.